Thanks everyone for dialing into Tony's Thursday Frequency. Your hosts tonight or this morning are Dominic and Lars. That's me, and we have two guests, in particular Julian and Francisco, and I'm really excited to hear from them because this has been in the making for a long time. I think it's a really interesting area. I'm not going to steal too much of your thunder. So, Julian, do you quickly want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Julian. I'm one of the lead engineers at Adobe, working on a lot of topics, but more recently around everything that's edge delivery services, and part of a team that's focusing on providing successful experiences directly at the edge. So we're working on trying to give our customers capabilities to do experimentation, segmentation, possibly personalization, being able to monitor how everything performs with nice reporting, etc., and then helping you fine-tune all of that, hopefully keeping excellent performance scores along the way. And Francisco, who's here with me, is also part of the team.
Excellent. Yeah. Francisco, what about you?
So as you just said, I'm working in the same team, and mostly in the last times I'm working with one collection, which is the topic that we are going to talk about today.
Great. Julian and Francisco, what are your favorite programming languages? And don't say JavaScript, that doesn't count. We all know it's your number one favorite programming language. So.
Well, I've been a front-end developer for the last 15 years, so for me, only JavaScript.
I come from the old CQ, so yeah, I'm until few, let's say, years, I would say 1 year or year and a half, I was working most of the time with Java.
Yeah. We won't hold that against you, I promise. Okay, excellent. Who of you wants to kick it off? I think you brought us a couple of things and a couple of demos, but as always, I would like to keep this as interactive as possible. So everyone feel in to just jump in, ask questions, and interrupt. And if you won't do it, then I will do it. So that's the way we roll today. So go ahead.
I leave Francisco start, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I can start. So today we are going to talk about RAM, which stands for Real User Monitoring, and it's a method to monitor how websites behave, how users are interacting with it, using real user data. And what I mean with real user data is it's not that we are running a set of scripts that are simulating the behavior of a user when accessing the website. It is actually gathering or collecting the data from the browsers of the real visitors to the website. We in aem Edge Delivery Services, we have an implementation of RAM collection, which is basically following two principles. One is performance, and the second one is privacy. Okay. The idea with privacy is that we don't collect any data, any personal information from the user. This is completely forbidden, and it is good because then we can add this real user monitoring without asking for explicit consent of the visitor. And the second principle is performance. So the idea is that we can track from the very beginning of the page and without having any impact on the performance. And that's important because as when you compare to other analytics solutions, maybe like Adobe Analytics or CJA, they have some impact in the performance. So if we added them at the beginning of the page, it will clearly have a bad impact on our Lighthouse scoring. And on the second hand, it also stores user or collects user information, personal information, which is something that, at least in Europe, we need to ask for permission for it, and explicit consent. So what are we tracking with RAM? We are tracking always the URL where the event is happening. We are tracking the user agent that the user or the visitor is accessing our website. And then we are tracking, this is the very basic things, right? And then we are tracking the checkpoints. A checkpoint is the event that is happening. We have different checkpoints in implemented out of the box. One is the top. Top event is important because it tells us that the page has started loading and that it is able to run JavaScript. So this is like our first entry point. Then we track things like clicks. We track things like core web vitals, which is super important to understand how the website is behaving or the performance of the website. We also track other user interactions, like if the user is starting to fill a form or if it is submitting it or not, if they are running a search, etc.
Yeah.
We also track when the user leaves the page, so we can have an idea of how long the user spent on the page, more or less.
So I promised you a couple of interruptions. So the first one would be along the privacy side of things. So you said we are tracking the URL and we are tracking the user agent, and the reality is we actually filter the URL so that we don't include any of the URL parameters, because we found sometimes, right? So, but by default, the content that we deliver on your helix.live or helix.page domains is not user specific in any way, right? Our customers, however, are often using UTM tags, which can have IDs for individual clicks, and then if you combine, if you would have the ability to get access to the raw RAM data, and you would be able to cross-reference it with other data, let's say from DoubleClick or from your ad system, you would have the opportunity to de-anonymize people. So that's why we are stripping. That's why we are stripping the URL parameters and fragment identifiers from the URL. And we do a similar thing for user agents. So for user agents, we are just keeping three broad categories, right? Is it desktop, is it mobile, or is it a bot? And that is also a measure to do additional privacy preservation, right? The basic idea is the more entropy you add to a data point, the more likely it's going to be, or the more likely it's going to have unique data. And that's the thing that you want to avoid, so that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Yep. Another thing regarding privacy that we added lately is that we are not tracking the timestamp when the user exactly performed the action, but we are stripping it off, so we know more or less how long it took from the first to the second interaction, but we don't know exactly at what time it happened.
Right.
Okay, so what can we use the data that we collect in RAM for? What is so we can use it to monitor system, of course. We want to know from Adobe side if there is an issue. Also, we can use it to get like very basic analytics. For instance, estimates of the number of visits that we have to the website or the page views. Estimates, because I forgot to mention something, that is that the RAM data is sampled. We don't track every single visit to the page, but we sample them. It means that by default, 1 out of 100 visits or page views will be tracked. Or
Record it.
also, the way we track the visits is that the scope of the data that we collect is limited to a page view. Means that the user is visiting a page or viewing a page and then switches to another one by clicking a link or something. Even if the second page that the user is visiting is also tracked, or there is no correlation between the two of them. So we are not able to identify that this user clicked on this link and went to this page, and then on the second page he did this other, or submission, or whatever he did. Yeah. So yeah, it is the scope is very limited to the page view. This is also in the for the privacy matters. Okay, so I was saying that we can use this data for basic analytics. We can use it to identify errors. For instance, recently we had an issue with a customer that we noticed that suddenly the amount of errors, 404 errors that were tracked in RAM, it was increasing very all of a sudden. And then we did some investigation and noticed that they had published a blog post, and the blog post had a link to a page that was existing or not published yet. So we let them know, and they immediately fixed that. At the moment, this is done in a let's say manual way, but of course in the future we want to automate all this monitoring, so that we can create alerts and inform customers that when something like this is happening. We can also use this data to know what are the core web vitals of our pages, and also to find or to. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
There was a microphone. Yep. So I was saying that we can track the core web vitals, and we can see if there are fluctuations of the core web vitals, and most important, how these fluctuations of core web vitals can affect or can impact the user behavior of the website. So maybe you don't notice because some author or some contributor uploaded an image that it's not the right one, or has a different sizing, or did some changes, or included a script, third-party script, or something like this, and suddenly you got a drop in the likelihood scoring, and then your conversions are going down. So with this run collection, we are able to identify or to correlate fluctuations in core web vitals with the user behaviors. We can also use it for tracking A/B tests. So if we are doing an A/B test on a website, we can identify which one used which variation was more successful, and many other things. Any questions so far?
I got a question. So you're saying that you're tracking also core web vitals and everything. So I'm assuming that you are doing this client side. That's being like a script running in the browser, gathering this data. For page hits and for assets, and so like, are you fetching this actually based on CDN hits, or is this also client side recorded and then pushed forward?
It's all client side. So the run collection is a piece of the JavaScript that we are loading with in aem delivery services, and this is tracking all the or getting all the information and pushing it to a service. In the service, there is then some filtering and so on, and then it's stored.
Okay.
Do we also get access to those ROM data? Or can you show us some examples?
Yes. So
Yeah.
Can I take it?
Yes.
So there are basically two ways of doing this. Number one, for our customers, we have this thing, basically this process that we call the data desk, which means in your Slack channel you can just ask for a particular question and we provide you with the data, which is especially helpful when it comes to things that are free form, right, where you don't really know where it's going yet. And the good thing about this is one of our data people is going to look at the question, is going to clarify it, right, so that we're just not mindlessly giving you whatever you ask for, but we're giving you what's answering the real question that you had. Secondly, for things where it's really about cookie cutter questions, right? Like what's the number of page views I'm getting, or what are the top pages, or what are the 404s that I'm seeing on the page. This is what we've built into the Franklin bot, so you can ask Franklin bot.
The intention of it was to be to understand how.
I'm going to mute you because I can hear you. If you're in the Slack channel, you can ask the Franklin bot for things like top pages, traffic, most wanted pages, or 404s, top images, things like that. And finally, we also have an API, which means you can ask us for an API key, and we give you an API key, and then you can run detailed queries. And whenever you are engaging with the data desk, it's typically that they will actually give you the source queries that they've been using, especially if it's one of the more common things, right, that haven't made it yet into the bot because they're not asked frequently enough. But that data that belongs to, or that is about your websites, we're making it available to you so that you can use it in your processes and use it to augment the data that you have, for instance, in Adobe Analytics.
Sounds great, thanks.
I will quickly show you how it is implemented on the boilerplate. I hope I can share the screen now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to click watch stream.
Is it working now?
Yes, it's working.
Okay. So, sample RAM is this function here. It is 105 lines of code. So it's very lightweight. And 105, having this in mind that most of the lines are like this. So, this is why it is performance-wise, this is really fast and does not impact the Lighthouse kernel of the website. Then the way to use it, so we define this function, and the way to use it is basically invoking, we can check here. Yeah, so just calling, maybe I need to put this, sample RAM and the checkpoint that you want to use. Okay, this is just a wrapper function that internally is another checkpoint, the observe checkpoint. So if your projects are using the boilerplate, which I hope, or I guess most of the customer projects are using the boilerplate, this is already built in, so you don't need to worry much about it, and just use it if you need specific, if you have specific use cases or requirements for the customer, for the project. So with this, I will hand it over to Julia, who will talk about some specific checkpoints that we have implemented lately.
One quick question. I also know that there is this Helix RAM collector repository.
Yes.
That you have. How does this differ? Because maybe you can spread some insights here, but what's the difference?
So there are basically two main parts that make up the RAM collection. One is the Helix RAM.js repository. Helix RAM.js implements the sample RAM function that is running on the client side. And this function is something that we embed automatically into aem.js, and aem.js is then automatically released into the boilerplate. And the boilerplate is something that you then copy in order to start your project. Right? And if you want to, you could even use Helix RAM.js on a non-Helix website, and we know at least one of our top 100 sites that we see in the RAM data is doing that. It's not running on Adobe Experience Manager at all. It's just using this library. And And this is then sending the data off to an endpoint, and the implementation of that endpoint is the Helix RUM collector. So, making this open source, I think, is an important aspect to the transparency when it comes to data, right? Because you can see what we are doing with this data, that we are not trying to do any shenanigans and trying to enrich it, but actually we are trying to filter things that could potentially be PII before we then store it in this case in Google BigQuery and in GoLogics, which we're using for operational logging. But in the end, that's more or less an implementation detail. So yeah, so it's Helix RUM.js and Helix RUM collector are the two main parts of it. And Francisco has been working mainly on the Helix RUM.js side of things, and David, who has been in one of the earlier frequencies, he's working on the RUM collector part.
There is also I don't know if you mentioned it, I think you did mention the enhancer. So we have another repo, which is the enhancer, which adds some more code, some more logic, and some to track further checkpoints. But this one is only included in case that the page view is part of the sample. So it's selected this 1 out of 100 that we mentioned before. In this case, if this happened, then we are including another script, also quite lightweight, which is included after the lazy happens, or at the end of the lazy load of post LCP. And this one is tracking additional checkpoints, like the form submission that we mentioned, or the images or videos that the user has seen or has watched in the page.
Yeah.
Okay, Julian. So all yours.
Thanks, Francisco. So I'm going to touch on a few particular checkpoints we are trying to track for some of our customers. I'm going to pull up a recent project I worked on, which is the Pet Place website. Let me just put that up quickly. And let's share the screen. Okay. So the goal of that project was essentially to port an existing WordPress site to AEM Edge delivery services, and one thing they wanted to be track, just because the way WordPress works and how it is able to dynamically resolve articles from the various types of URLs, they wanted to see how they can track if the transition with it was working fine, and if people had to rely on search or if they were seeing 404 issues, etc. So we set up a few checkpoints. One is whenever you search something. So let's go for I don't know, catnip. If I go ahead and search for something, we are triggering a sample RUM call that will essentially just tell, say, there was a search for that particular word. And I have the instrumentation here that is just a one-liner that we have for this. So we're saying, hey, we searched something, we searched we give a CSS selector to the input field we used, because essentially you can search here, you can also search here, and they even have a search bar here on the side. They essentially have 3 search fields, and all of them have essentially different selectors, just to be able to see which one is used more than the other ones. And then we tracked the query word that was used. Now, this gave them an opportunity to see first if people were not finding the topics they are looking for when they reach the homepage. So maybe now it's Halloween time. If people come and start looking for Halloween stuff and there's nothing on the homepage, that tells them that they have an opportunity to push some new interesting content related to whatever is popular at the moment. And if they have the content already there, then it gives them an opportunity maybe to bring it back to the homepage and push it further up in the navigation so that their customers find it in an easier fashion. And the same way you find search terms, you also want to know when something doesn't give you any results. I don't know what I can try. So since I'm on the pet stuff, let's see if I search for AM. I guess I should not find anything. Okay, so now knowing that we didn't have any results is also something we are tracking, and we use a different checkpoint for that, which is null search. So essentially, same as a search, we just specifically say, hey, it's a non-result. And again, that's an opportunity then for marketers to understand that people are looking for some content that they actually cannot find on the website. Maybe there was some news about a new medication that vets are pushing and they don't have it. So, okay, now they could go ahead and collaborate with some vets to push an article for that. So we can push that information. Now, the question that came earlier was how does the end user or the marketer get access to that, and how does it look like in the end? So for the specific search and null search, we don't have any dashboards at the moment, so it's mostly just API queries. But essentially, it's going to look like like this. So we see here for a null search. So I was searching for specific. Let's see, what was it? For specific checkpoint here. And I'm getting the results back. So I had 200 views for Escapoo that did not return any results. So maybe whatever Escapoo is, maybe there's an opportunity to write an article on that or on Surolan. And similarly, if I just go ahead and replace these with just regular search, I will see what popular topics are here. Sorry, this one takes a bit of time to format, so I'm gonna, let's see if I can just access the source. It's gonna be easier. Okay, so here we can see other stuff that's been popular. So Unacefin, deflated eye, etc. So all of this is using information for the marketers, and we're working now with that particular customer and also others to try to see how they would like to get that information back into the page, either as some kind of overlay, some kind of sidekick helper, or maybe via the bot that we have in Slack. So that's for the raw data. For some other stuff, like for pages, that's also something we are reporting. So if I try to access something that does not exist, it's a... So this is a 4.4 page. Now, we also want to know if people are trying to access stuff that, links that are just dead. And for that, we actually built some dashboards. The data desk provides them. And here is a sample of the 4.4s that we tracked over the last 7 days for the site. And the same way that we have this basic here, we can also then work with the customers to bring that closer. We have it in the Slack bot as well, but we can also work on maybe bringing that closer directly via the Sidekick, via some extensions, etc. So these were the two. Oh wait, I have another one I forgot about. We are also tracking on that particular site. We are testing to track the UTM parameters. So the UTM are the Urchin tracking module parameters. These are mostly marketing backlinks attributes that end up on your URLs. And we are first making sure that we're not tracking anything that's non-anonymous. So we are never tracking the UTM ID, which is a specific parameter that's used with that norm. We just collect the stuff that's generic. Now, that tells us essentially what's, where our customers, or where the traffic is coming from. So if I try again, let's see, searching for UTM campaigns. I think that's it. No.
I think it was UTM campaign without the S.
Yeah, I always mistype it. Thank you. And I want us to check not just the targets, I'm also going to use sources so we have a bit more data. So, all right. So we see here a few examples. So for that particular page, the best dog breed for every zodiac sign, we see that we have email campaigns that are bringing in quite a lot of views. I mean, we have 13,000 views. Most of them are also have the source set as iterable, so they're actually using a third-party tool to push content. And they can see that this is actually bringing in quite a lot. I mean, that's essentially the top UTM on the site is coming from that tool they're using. And if I follow the same logic, then probably this one that only brings about 100 views is not that popular. So if this is a paid campaign, maybe it's time to pull it because it's not bringing much traffic. So again, this is raw data, and we're trying to see how we could bring that information back directly in a useful manner directly on the page, so that marketers have that directly in context. Yeah. And following this, we can also run A/B test experiments. I have one here. That's just our weekend reference site. So we have an engine that does A/B tests, and you essentially you have a controller and a few variants. And the same way we are tracking the UTM parameters or the searches, we are tracking also what experiment is being served to the end user and what variant they're getting. And then we're pulling the data back into the UI here directly to give in-context information about how many clicks happened on a specific variant, and essentially deciding which one of the variants is actually possibly increasing conversion or not. And talking about conversion,
yeah.
Was there a question?
Yeah, just to remark, right? One of the things that your reports are showing, right, is that the difference in usage pattern, right? So for pet plays, traffic is coming from marketing campaigns
or not. I understand that like these slots are provided from outside,
so traffic is coming from lots of campaigns, right? But it's not going into search very often. And one of the things that the sampled nature of RAM forces you to do, it forces you to reckon with the fact that your users are not doing certain things very often, right? And what I hear from time to time from people when they're confronted with that fact, they're saying, "Oh well, I'm only getting 200 searches. It must be the sample rate's fault that I'm only getting 200 searches. So let me crank up the sample rate so that I can see more data." The thing is, your visitors are not going to search more based on that, right? Instead, the signal that the data is giving you is nobody cares about this feature. Move on, right? Concentrate your time on something else, which might be things like the 404s that you're getting on your page, might be things that like the fact that some of the pages we are dealing with have lots of JavaScript errors, in a lot of cases introduced by third-party scripts. And of course, the one of the areas where it's almost always useful to invest is obviously performance, right? Unless you are at a lighthouse score of 100, then you've reached the point of diminishing returns. But helping you guide where you put your development efforts is really something that we want to do with that data.
Can I give the counterpoint to that, Lars?
Yep.
So everything you said is correct. The one thing though I'm thinking is the search terms. I think that we could collect more search terms, more unique search terms, and if we had a different sampling rate.
Yes, maybe, but you would also run into, right? So one of the risks that you have with, especially with low volume search terms, is that they can expose PII, right? So people are putting things into search boxes that you wouldn't feel comfortable with normally, and that's why, right? So that's why I wouldn't over-index on that. And you've seen our data, right? You've seen across hundreds of AEM sites how frequently the search checkpoint is being fired, and it's really one of the it's one of the least popular search. It's one of the least popular checkpoints, and the reason for this is, I believe, is that a lot of people that want to search on a site are using Google for this anyway, right? So that's a good starting point.
I see. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so wait. Oh, I see Chris is typing. Chris, you don't have to type. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to say on the topic of search, we're actually on Adobe.com. We're starting to we're testing into removing search because of the engagement data is just so low.
Yeah,
it's exactly what you said. People, once people get to your site, they've Googled for something that's on your site. So providing them another search that's likely far inferior to Google.
Yeah,
maybe not the best thing. So, and we do get a lot of traffic to show that sort of statistical significance.
Yeah, and I would say that as site operators, we obviously have a slightly uneasy relationship with search engines, right? We rely on them to deliver us traffic. They punish us by saying, "Come on, bring up your Lighthouse score, otherwise we're going to derank you." They're doing stuff that we don't like selling keywords for our brand name to our competitors, and I think that's just part of the game, right? So we have to in certain areas we have to play according to their rules, which means they care about user experience, so we have to, at least if we care about their traffic. And in other areas we can just roll with them, right? Instead of saying let's duplicate what they do, right? And whether this, and if I'm thinking of Adobe.com, right? This could be duplicating things like search, but this could also be duplicating geo-routing, right? So if I'm in Germany and I search for an English term and I get to the US website on Adobe.com, in a lot of cases that's exactly what I want. And I don't want to see the pop-up that is asking me, hey, do you want to see the German translation of this? No, I want the English version because I need to share it with a colleague who doesn't speak German. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. I think aside from this SEO implications, we have historically really struggled with our regional sites. With the geo-routing pop-up, we're actually globally recognized as one of the best sites for our geo-routing implementation, like award-winning. But that does not mean it's perfect by any means. Like you said, and what's interesting is there's actually even European Union laws that prevent us from providing the best experience because. Let's say you are a Swiss visitor and you want to cross-shop. Like we've all done it. Like you're in Basel and you're like, oh, I'm going to go to Germany for a less expensive dinner or whatever it is. The idea that you could just drive to a brick and mortar store and do a comparison shop. So the EU actually put in laws where we cannot automatically say, oh, we found you're in Germany, take you to Germany because of that exact reason that you're talking about, Lars. Like, I searched for an English word. I want an English site. Why are you bugging me?
Yeah.
And similarly, we have other people that are like, I'm in Germany. Why don't you just take me to the German site? And it's like, well, it's not that simple because Lars wants the English site and he's in Germany.
Right.
So, that's a really good call out.
No, I think the part of the European legislation is probably that on the one hand they want to encourage the Germans to check out the prices in the Romanian or Bulgarian store, right? Where we would, as a seller, would have an incentive to lowering the prices, but we still would like to have the price discrimination, which is basically a thing that is forcing us to equalize prices across the common market, right? That's why it's called the common market. But on the other hand, every country has their own rate for value-added tax, right? Which is, if you want to do it right, you basically cannot get equal prices that are also looking great, like $29.99, and adhere to local tax law. So it's Chris, you know the nightmare that I'm talking about. You basically cannot have it all, and sometimes you cannot even explain it that you cannot have it all.
Well, but it really is good. I think that's where like RUM does have the potential of RUM or analytics does have the potential of really helping you identify these sorts of, what are you seeing in the wild, where maybe I think RUM's moving towards this like very privacy first GDR, like we don't even have to pop up like a cookie, consent law because it is all very private. You're going to capture way more data than you would with a traditional like Adobe Analytics style implementation. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. So from a product design perspective, right? I'm sometimes getting asked, okay, when should I use RUM instead of Analytics, right? Whether it's Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics, or where should I use what, right? And the reality is that most of our customers are using both. One part of this is, of course, that we require them to use RUM because this is what we do for license enforcement. But the other part is that RUM can basically give you breadth, right? It's sampled. But it's an unbiased sample of almost 100% of your visitors. Whereas analytics, and whenever you implement analytics in a way that is compliant with privacy laws, and I'm not saying that everyone is doing this, but whenever you do this, you get a very, very biased sample. Right? You get a biased sample that is maybe between 20 to 50% of your actual traffic, because only 20 to 50% of your actual traffic are going to opt in to analytics data collection at all, right? But of this 20 to 50%, you are going to get a very deep and very personalized view, right? Because all of the custom events you've defined, all of the evals, all of the funnel analysis, all of the repeat visitor analytics, all of these things are now available in your analytics tool of choice. Things that RUM would never be able to capture, and just the question of how many pages does somebody visit on an average session is something that statisticians would call a nightmare, and that's something that Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics can answer super easily, right? But they can only answer it for people that are opting into this. And we can now argue, is this a fair sample or is this an unfair sample? And that's actually one of the things that I want to figure out with the Adobe.com team, right? To see if people who opt in are behaving substantially different from people who opt out and who are more privacy conscious, right? And we can't even say if they're better customers or worse customers, simply because we don't have the data yet.
Yeah, I think Julian, I joined a little late, but I think you're getting into something that is really core and kind of along the lines of the discussions we've had the last few days. Like for us, RUM is like, we do it for you folks mostly. Like we do it because you want the data. We don't use the data at all. And I think getting this to, Julian, to your point, like getting this data surface, so it's not this like sort of offshoot like, oh, if you know this obscure Helix run anywhere URL, you can get your RUM data. It's like getting that to be useful and actionable and surfaced in a way, because right now what the typical customer just gets it out of Slack, right? Or there's a random JSON endpoint. And so like our marketers that want this data, they're using CJA, they're using Adobe Analytics, and we're like, okay, so we can have crappy performance and use analytics and all the GDPR stuff that we just talked about, or we can use RUM, and like RUM is we've got the data collection part dialed. It's great. It's super performant and all of that. But it's like, how do we get access to that data in a friendly way that our marketers are comfortable with? And for me, that would be like, as a customer of Franklin, like, the hope would be that we can start making a compelling case to say, well, start using Rum. You know, it's now funneling into all your tools, and you get better data, and it's totally privacy friendly, versus like this heavy, you know, other thing that we're doing. So
yeah.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up, Lars, because this is what I've been dealing with the last month for this customer that is very Adobe Analytics focused, and and they're like, oh, but Rum is just sampling. But you brought up a good point about, you know, the opt-in. You're sampling no matter what.
Exactly. There's no, right, so I think this is Heisenberg's uncertainty relation. Right, you cannot observe a system without interfering with the system, which means essentially any way you measure is biased in some way, right? And there's always a systematic bias in there, and you have to account for this, right? And if you tend to ignore it, then you're going to ask your vendors, why don't your numbers line up? But if you understand why the numbers don't line up, because you're measuring in different ways and you understand how it's being measured, then you can make smart decisions based on that, right? Because there are dozens of sources that can tell you how much traffic you're getting, and your Rum and your CDN analytics and third-party analytics and let's say Google Analytics are all going to give you slightly different numbers, but they're going to be in the same order of magnitude, right? And they're going to see, and on top of that, you're going to see exactly the same trends in all of them. So. Okay, Julian, did you have more points, or did we interrupt you, or did we follow up on your presentation?
No, you did a beautiful follow-up. I was essentially done. I don't know if Francisco, if you wanted to dive deeper into custom conversions, instrumentation, and how that works, but I feel like this is going to go really technical. I'm not sure if I'm going to spend about 20 minutes on that.
We have 7 minutes.
I can summarize, yes, and talk about conversion checkpoint. So, how did we come with we need a conversion checkpoint? It happened because one of our customers were using experimentation, and then they said, okay, but we with Rum we know how many people click on each of the variants, but where they click anywhere, I want to know which one they click on the sign-in button, for instance. Right? Because this is what I'm testing. So I want to know specifically which visitors are clicking there, not which visitors are clicking anywhere in the page. So for that, we created a new checkpoint, which is called conversion. It's not part of the built-in. Rum collection, but it is available in this GitHub repo that I'm just sharing. So aem-Rum conversions, and here you have instructions of how you can use it. The cool thing about this feature is that we allow practitioners, or we enable practitioners to define in an easy way without having to depend on a developer the conversions on a page. So they can basically say, okay, I want that the button sign in is a conversion, or this form submission is a conversion, but clicking on this other link or on submitting this other form is not a conversion. And we have already some customers using it. I can show you a couple of them. So this is Bitdefender, of course, for them. What is important is not learn about that buy now, right? And they want to track when someone clicks on the buy now, and then you will see that they are tracking this conversion buy now. And then we have another one, for instance, Mamotom. I don't know if you heard about them, but for them, in this case, the conversion is the schedule at the moment. Okay, when you click it here, it's also tracking a conversion here, schedule at the moment button. And yeah, if we submit this form, we will also get a conversion for this form.